Hey Playbookers, it's Todd with the Church Playbook, and I'm here to answer your questions about the unique challenges that we as pastors face when we lead churches under 200. Hey, one of the fun things that I've experienced since starting this YouTube channel is really getting to know you. And thanks to comments on the videos, thanks to the emails I've gotten, thanks to social media and comments on Facebook and whatnot, I have had the opportunity to get to know some of you and your families, talk about your church, talk about the community that you're in, and even some of the challenges that you're facing right now. In fact, for those of you that I have talked to, you know, one of the first questions I ask is, so what's the biggest challenge that you're facing right now? And, you know, I wrote the Church Playbook a couple of years ago, and man, I've already got enough material just from our conversations to write Playbook 2.0, just from the conversations that we've had about the challenges that you are facing. One of the questions that I have gotten sort of gets framed this way. It's, hey, Todd, our church was growing. Like, we were doing well. Things were going up and to the right. We had new families coming. And then just after a while, it kind of just stopped. And we didn't change anything. It just stopped. And so, you know, why is that? Why do churches, you know, stop growing? Why does growth slow down over time? And so, for those of you that have asked that question, and for those of you that have been thinking that and just haven't asked yet, there's a couple of things I want to say about it, and then I've got 4 things that I want to give you about why churches slow down with their growth and what you can do about it. So the first thing that I want to say is, at the time of this recording, we're like 2 days away from July, which means we are smack dab in the middle of summer. And so if you guys were just killing it, you guys were doing it okay in February and March and April, and then Easter hit, and you really kind of were taking off like a rocket, and then all of a sudden, you know, that kind of gets culminated in Mother's Day, and then we hit what I call the spring slide, and things just start to slow down. And you hit the month of June, and like everybody has a graduation. Like 2-year-olds have graduation from daycare, preschoolers have graduation. It's like everybody gets a cap and gown and a diploma for something. Well, what that means is Grandma and Grandpa's coming in from out of town. We're gonna make a whole weekend of it, and your faithful people are gonna miss some Sundays. So listen, if you guys were doing pretty good in the spring, and now that it's summer, things have slowed down, things have plateaued a little bit, take a deep breath. Don't let yourself get too anxious. They're gonna come back. It's just summertime, and families take time off during the summer. You should take time off during the summer. In fact, right in the comment section below, comment the word vacation, and I'll reply with, there's probably 2 or 3 other Sundays this summer that you could take off and no one would even notice that you were gone. And so I just got back from vacation, and so, you know, we hit it hard. I'd have all my staff take July off, basically. I take most of June off, and then we're all back in August before school starts again. So it's summertime. Don't get anxious. Take a deep breath. You'll be okay. Now, a mentor of mine, a guy named Larry Osborne, talks about you know, some reasons why church growth slows down, and it really helped clarify some things, help me understand some things in my church, and I want to pass these along to you. But I want to take you back to when I was a young guy, young married guy, and I had a Camaro, and it was not a very nice Camaro, but it was my Camaro, and I loved it. The thing was broken down half the time, but it didn't matter if it was running or not. Any idea what I was doing every Saturday morning? I was out in my driveway. I was washing that thing. I don't care if I could crank the engine over. I was washing my Camaro because I love that car. So inevitably, you rinse the thing off, then you soap it up, right? And then it's time to rinse it off again. And so it happens I've washed a car 1,000 times. It happens every single time. When you whip the hose around, because you got to get around to the other side of the car, what happens? Inevitably, the hose gets stuck under one of the 4 tires. And all of that precious water flow that was taking care of your baby is now cut off. And church growth is very similar to water going through a hose, and there are times where the hose can get kinked and cut off the flow of what makes you grow. I'm just kidding. So here are 4 things. I'm going to give you 4 things that cut or slow down, cause churches to plateau. These are not the only 4 things. These are just 4 things. I'm going to give you a couple of things that you can do in each of these cases, and then I've got sort of a bonus tip at the end of this. So one reason why churches plateau is because of a lack of worship space. A lack of worship space. Now, you get up on stage on Sunday, you get up behind the pulpit, you look out in the audience, and you are thinking to yourself, there are still empty seats in this room. We are not full. But that is not how your guests or your members look at this. If you get up on the stage and you look out in the audience and you cannot find 4 empty seats in a row, your room is full. And here's why. When you have a new family that shows up to your church, mama usually wants her kids to sit with the family at least the first time before she sends them off to Sunday school or, children's ministry, however you do it at your church. And so the entire family sits together. If you've got a new family of 4 that walks through the door and there's not 4 consecutive seats empty, in their mind, they're thinking there's nowhere for us to sit. Okay? So there's a couple of things that you could do with this. And the first thing is you've got to get creative with your worship center environment, the space, and the seating. I'm not talking about more lighting or pretty decorations. I'm not talking about being creative like that. What I'm talking about is if you've got 36 inches of depth, of width in between each row, you need to shrink that sucker down to 24. It should feel like, this is what it should feel like, if you went to a ball game or if you went to a movie, and one of the most annoying things is when you go to a movie and then someone 7 seats down wants to get up and go to the concessions in the middle of the movie, and so everyone's like pulling their knees to their chest and trying not to get stepped on. So it should kind of feel like that, not that cramped, but almost. And what you do is you're making room for 2 or 3 more rows. Now in the summer, it's the exact opposite. I always want the room to look full without being too full. And in fact, it should be at least 50% full, right? Back in the day, the guys smarter than me would say, hey, once the room's 80% full, it's full. I'm, of the mind, it's like 65 to 70% full is full now. Now, in the summer, it's the exact opposite. Instead of shrinking the width and the depth of the rows, I'm extending the width and the depth of the rows and taking out 2 or 3 rows so that when people come in, 3 minutes late after church has started, like, oh man, the room's full. Now, I mean, there's still 3 or 4 consecutive seats empty, so we can always have new guests. And, you know, I've got a facilities guy, and I stand in the back of the room during worship, and I'm directing traffic sometimes and saying, hey, go get another row. I would always rather have to bring out extra chairs than take out extra chairs, you know, during a service. And when you're putting out extra chairs, it creates sort of this, oh gosh, our church is doing something good. We're growing. So in the summer, it's the opposite. But hey, once you hit the fall, man, shrink them rows down, add a few extra chairs so that you can seat more people in your worship space. Now, another reason why churches will plateau is children's space. Children's space. You've got to have enough room for your kids to run around and play and do crafts and learn about Jesus. And by the way, it's got to be clean. If you don't have your children's ministry person, your director of education, whatever it is in your church, I hope they're sanitizing toys after the end of every Sunday. I hope you're getting your carpets cleaned back there once a month because you want it to look clean, you want it to smell clean, because again, when that new mom comes back there and she's going to drop her kid off for the first time, you know, it should be bright and you should have music playing, you know, whatever the like worship version of Kids Bop is, right? It's kind of bumping and driving a little bit, and it's just fun, and it's the kind of place where a kid would actually want to be dropped off. And if the kid's doing okay, mom and dad are going to be able to focus on what you're having to say, and it really increases the opportunity for them to come back. Now, if you're out of children's space, you've got to be creative with how to get more. We had our offices attached to the church building. This is a few years ago, and we had a particular age group. The like 8 to 10 year old group was really growing, and I actually made all of us except for one person move out of the offices, and we turned the front office into a classroom every single week until we could get some more kid space, because you got to have the space. We can meet at Starbucks. People can work from home. I ended up leasing some other office space, but you've classroom space trumps office space. So get creative. You can rent one of those mobile offices, you know, trailers that construction companies use. You know, they'll put an office trailer on site while they're there, and they're actually really inexpensive. So that's another way that you can increase your children's space. So worship space, a lack of it is a limiter. A lack of children's space is a limiter. Here's another one, and that's parking. You need to make sure you have enough parking. Now, we do 3 services, and so that gives us, you know, more parking spaces to use. The challenge for us is we're such a volunteer-intensive organization that, you know, our volunteers will show up first service, and we even have sort of like a designated space, designated area for our volunteers to park in, because we want our best spaces available for our guests. But it's still, parking's an issue for us. And so, you know, I'm telling my staff, I park off-site, my staff parks off-site, I ask my ministry leaders to park off-site, and then we're about ready to ask our members to park off-site, because we have so many guests that come every Sunday. And parking, people are weird. If you don't have a parking space for them, they think in their head they must not have a place for me. So worship space, children's space, parking. And here's the last one. Again, the reason why I wrote the Church Playbook was to help churches to get to 200. I'm not trying to get you to break 200. I mean, the average size church is somewhere, numbers fluctuate all the time, right? It's like 74 to 92. It's less than 100. And if we can help churches double to get to 200, the senior pastor doesn't have to be bivocational. You can afford a couple of part-time staff. You have ministry budget for your children's and students, and you've got benevolence and community outreach budget that you have in the bank. And so I want to help people get churches to get to 200. There are a lot of amazing courses out there that will help you break 200. But the reason why I am not trying to get you to break 200 is because two things. Number one, I believe whether you're in a farm town or a big city, there are 200 people in your community that would love to go to your church if they just knew you existed. So that's number one. I think you can get to 200 no problem. The second reason why I'm not trying to get you to break 200 is because you have to fundamentally change this fourth thing that I'm about ready to talk about, and that is governance. Governance is a growth limiter. And so if you're if you're going to break 200, you have to change the leadership structure of the church. The elders can't be in charge of everything. The staff has to be responsible and have authority to make decisions about a lot of things. And you have to change the structure again at 400, 600, 800, and 1,000. So no matter whether you're elder-led, staff-led, congregationally led, you can get to 200 just by lifting the lid off of your worship space, off of your children's spaces, off of the parking. Governance is not that big of a deal when you're under 200. It will become a deal once you're trying to break 200. Now, if you are in a decline, and I mean a steady decline for 6 months, a year, longer than that, you can make tweaks to these 3 out of the 4 things, and I really think that will help you if you've just been plateaued for 6 months, a year, 2 years. Chances are it is one of these 3 things. Now, here is probably the most efficient and effective way to break a growth plateau in your church. And again, plateau, not decline, and that is you need to add another service. You need to add another time where people in your community can come and worship and hear the gospel and give their life to Christ. And for whatever reason, they cannot attend at your current service time. Okay, so when we started our church, we actually started with 2 services, and my thinking was this: there are some people, they want to get up early and they want to go to church, and they've got a lot of stuff to do, and so they want to get it done early and go. And then there are some people that they're not even awake at 9 in the morning, and so they're definitely not going to show up at 9 o'clock. And so we started with 9 and 11. And it's because I didn't want to have to choose one or the other. And here's the challenge. When you choose, say, 10 o'clock as opposed to 9 or 11, it's really kind of a mediocre option for early people or late people. Now, you'll get more later people to show up at 10, but you lose a whole demographic of people that would go to your church if it was just earlier. And so the quickest way to break a growth plateau, if you're out of worship center space, if you're out of children's center space, and if you're having issues with your parking, is to add another service. So listen, I hope that was helpful. Again, comment in the comment section that word vacation. I'll give you 3 Sundays that you can take off this summer. If you've got questions, comments, or concerns, also put those in the comment section. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel, because every time you do, YouTube puts videos like this in front of other pastors like us that need some practical and so inexpensive, it's free, resources and advice from one leader to another, from just a guy that's been there and made 1,000 mistakes, and I've learned a couple of things. So, hey, I so appreciate and am grateful that you're trusting me with your time and attention. Share this with another pastor who could use some help, and we'll see you next week.